Douglas County Community Access Television presents the Regional Report, issues of interest in a complex world, with Regional Reporter Steve Teshara. And now, with today's program, here's Steve Teshara.
Greetings and welcome back to our studios here in Zephyr Cove, Nevada, for another edition of the Regional Report, a feature of Douglas County Community Access Television. Hello and welcome to our guest today, Dennis Zabaglo.
Thank you, Steve.
Dennis, welcome to the show. So a little bit about Dennis. He's a principal environmental specialist with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Resources Management from Penn State University and 25 years of experience in the field. And in a minute, we'll ask him how many of those years have been here at Tahoe. So Dennis leads the Aquatic Invasive Species program at the agency. And it's not just the agency, it's a robust program with, according to Dennis's figures here, 40 different partners, public and private sector partners, which is really important because this is such an important issue. We will talk a little bit about the fact that we have some existing aquatic invasive species, and that's a program that Dennis runs, is how do we deal with that, and also prevention, keeping mussels and other invasive species that we don't have out of the lake. And if you've seen the news recently, you know there was another incident where the boat inspector teams captured a couple boats with mussels in them and decontaminated them. So, you know, we're always sort of living on the edge here. It's a constant attention that requires for these boat inspection programs. But let's step back a couple of steps, and I wanted to ask you, Dennis, what got you into the field of environmental resource management?
I've always been interested in science and biology, and when I was a young freshman in college, I was on that path, heading towards a biology degree, but I remember watching a special on TV with Carl Sagan, and he was always kind of a childhood idol. My dad always really enjoyed reading his books, the old TV show Cosmos on PBS.
Right.
But he did an environmental program on TV, a special on television, and it just really struck me, and I switched courses and started down a path of environmental resources.
But you do have some background in science and biology and those kinds of things, which I think really help you in this resource management issue, because there is a lot of science behind the whole issue of AIS.
Absolutely.
So what brought you to Tahoe?
Well, I'm an East Coaster from Pittsburgh originally, but I lived in Salt Lake for a few years when I was a young child and just kind of became infatuated with mountains. And my wife and I took a ski trip out here in 2000. And fell in love with it and was able to find a job, thankfully, at the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and I moved out here and have been here ever since.
So that's almost 20 years with TRPA.
Yeah, this is my 19th year this year.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So you started out and you worked your way up, and of course, over the course of that time, AIS became a huge issue.
Yeah,
huge issue.
Absolutely. I started out in compliance, looking at projects, making sure they're following the rules and protecting the lake. And I got into the watercraft program, and that's when invasive species came around. Well, at least to our knowledge, with quagga mussels being discovered in Lake Mead. As you mentioned, we've had some here in the past, but that got everybody pretty excited. And so it was, I guess, an easy fit for the inspection program to go to the watercraft guy. So we started that 11 years ago now.
Wow.
And so resounding success so far.
And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I do know that not only is Dennis really strong on the whole program and very knowledgeable about it here at Tahoe, but has branched out, and you deal with other western states that have similar problems, some of them worse problems, and you've been very active at the national level and speaking at conferences and really becoming a well-known person and knowledgeable expert in the field, which a lot of areas are dealing with. So again, taking a couple steps back, when you talk to people about aquatic invasive species, AIS, what do you find that people do know about it these days?
You know, because of the education outreach that we've done, I think people get the idea that we're trying to keep things out. They may not know the difference necessarily. I remember walking on the beach a couple years ago on the South Shore when we were a little bit of drought time, and the beach was much bigger. And we do have Asian clams.
Yes.
That's one species we do have, and you can see the dead clam shells on the lake or on the beach there.
Yeah.
And I heard a couple people say, oh, those are those mussels they're trying to keep out. And so I was like, but at least they understand that we are trying to do something to keep new invaders out. We do not have quagga mussels in Lake Tahoe. We've done a really good job with our boat inspection program for 11 years, keeping out anything new. And so people, they get it. Clean, drain, and dry is the message we're trying to promote to boaters to arrive at our inspection stations.
Seems pretty effective.
Yeah.
I think you've had reports to the governing board or other bodies where you say that now more and more people are coming and they know that that's the mantra, that's what they need to do.
Exactly, and it's simple and it's action driven, right? Clean, drain, and dry is 3 simple things you can do and have a good time on Lake Tahoe.
So that's basically cleaning your boat, draining any of the areas in the boat where there's water,
Right.
and then making sure it's dried.
Correct.
Because what you're doing, I guess, is eliminating where the critters could be hiding, the AIS.
Super easy.
Yeah. And also, I should add, too, working with boat manufacturers to eliminate some of those hiding places.
Yeah, we've had a lot of good success. We have the same customers. We have customers trying to recreate, they want to sell boats, and so we share the same folks and trying to find ways the boat industry can build or design their boats a little bit differently with keeping clean, drain, and dry in mind. And so we've had a lot of good success with some filters being built or really easy, quick connections on the engines to allow decontaminations to happen a lot easier. And so we're working with the industry continually to keep the change, because if it's easier for them, it's easier for us, it's easier for everybody, and everybody has a good time.
The proverbial win-win.
Exactly.
So talk a little bit about the inspection program and who runs it and how the relationship between you and your team at TRPA and the inspection folks works.
Sure. So we started our inspections in 2008, just 6 short months after the discovery of quagga mussels in Lake Mead, so pretty fast action, I think. But we've been partnering with the Tahoe Resource Conservation District since that time frame, and they do a fantastic job of hiring the inspectors. So it's a really good partnership where TRPA provides the regulatory and the policy role, the financial role, and the Tahoe RCD as our partner does the implementation for us. And so we have 4 inspection stations throughout the lake, and all motorized watercraft are required to be inspected prior to launching Lake Tahoe. And you come to a station, get an inspection, become educated on the issues and why we're doing what we're doing.
Right.
And if you need a decontamination, if you're not clean, drain, and dry, we do a hot water decontamination. Kills everything that have come across based on some research.
Right.
So we want to have all our decisions based on science when possible. And then we put a little seal on your boat, and you can go to any launch ramp you want. They make sure that seal's intact. You can launch, have a good time in Lake Tahoe, come back off the lake. That same facility would put a new seal on, and then you don't have to be re-inspected to come back to Lake Tahoe. You just go right back to the ramp.
And there's a seal that's for boats that are just at Tahoe, in and out of Tahoe, and then there's one for boats that people take to different lakes and different water bodies.
We have, it's 2 stickers.
2 stickers.
And the sticker is essentially a receipt saying what part of the program you've purchased into. We do charge for our services, but that's complemented by state funds.
Right.
So it's a 50-50 cost share. But the seal is the same. And so if they put the new seal on the boat, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
As long as you
Depends
have
on the
seal.
sticker that you have.
Yeah, the sticker, we have a Tahoe only or a Tahoe in and out. And if you get a Tahoe in and out sticker, it's going to cost a little bit more because we're doing more inspections on the boat.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I guess the gist of the prevention program.
Well,
Are
we
there
also
some other elements of that?
Yeah, I'd like to mention the marinas that we partner with,
right,
all
of
the
course.
launch facilities that are totally bought into this program, and the program wouldn't be as successful as it is without their support too. So wanted to make sure we mention them as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we do have existing AIS in the lake. You mentioned the Asian clams. There's also some pretty nasty weeds that are in the lake. And talk to us a little bit about the control programs and some eradication efforts.
Sure. Yeah, with the weeds we have are Eurasian water milfoil and curleaf pondweed, 2 prominent invasive plant species throughout the country. So we're not unique to that. We've had some really good success in areas of the lake, smaller populations, maybe an acre or 2. Again, the Tahoe Resource Conservation District is another implementing arm of that program. Using bottom barriers, divers pulling the weeds manually,
Wow.
or some suctioning, but localized eradication in many places in the lake. but we do have a couple big populations, especially the Tahoe Keys.
Right.
It's about 170 acres of waterways that are almost entirely infested with those two weeds. And so we are now embarking on a collaborative process, working with the homeowners there, the League to Save Lake Tahoe, the Tahoe water suppliers, the League to Save Lake Tahoe, looking at what options do we have to deal with that issue. Because I mentioned the smaller populations we were dealing with, 1 to 2 acres, now many, many times larger than that.
Right.
Will those traditional methods be effective?
And is it true, Dennis, that a lot of times that boats going out of the Keys to other parts of the lake inadvertently drag pieces of the weeds that are in the Keys and infest other areas? Certainly not on purpose, but that's a real challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those plants, they break apart, they fragment, and that's each little piece can sprout a new plant. And the plants do that naturally, but boat propellers can do that as well. But the Keys has done a really good job. They partnered with the League to Save Lake Tahoe, the Tahoe Keys Property Owners Association, I should say. They installed some pretty innovative approaches to prevent those fragments from going out into the lake. They have a boat backup station that's demarked by buoys, where you can go take your boat through these buoys and provides you a safe opportunity to back up, put your prop in reverse, to kind of blow off all those fragments that may have collected. And then you can go out into the lake, and there's a bubble curtain, which is
bubble curtain.
Yeah, pretty fun stuff. Just a hose on the bottom of the channel there that puts up a wall of bubbles, and that has been pretty effective of blocking those fragments from floating out into the lake itself, whether they're on the surface or just below. And then there's these sea bins that are active little collectors that will collect all these fragments before they go out into the lake. So
does somebody empty the sea bins?
They do.
At a later time?
The Tahoe Keys Property Owners Association has staff that maintains them, and they also have some skimmers, pool skimmers, pretty simple technology, but they go out there and skim the fragments as well.
And then there's been Asian clams and some efforts to, if not completely eradicate, to at least keep them from spreading. I know places on the east shore, there were even some found up by Sand Harbor a while back. What's being done on that front?
We have done some small-scale projects and increasing the size as we learn more. You start out small. Emerald Bay was our first project, about 5 to 6 acres. It was a little bit of a challenging location with all the boat traffic, and certainly during low water years, that boat traffic can impede some of that. Those projects are rubber mats that are just going on the bottom of the lake.
Suffocate the clams, basically?
Exactly. But then we've also discovered that infestation in Sand Harbor, so we're doing a project there actively with the same rubber mats. It's a little bit larger, but the state, working with state parks and state lands to kind of maintain that so it doesn't get any bigger.
Right.
It's just, there's so many of them. And the technology we have currently is a little bit challenging and expensive. But in places like an Emerald Bay or a Sand Harbor, iconic locations in Lake Tahoe, you want to try to do what you can to protect them.
Yeah. How did the Asian clams get to Tahoe to begin with?
We likely think they were bait. They're about the size of your thumbnail, and they can be used as bait by fishermen, and it's likely that's where they came from. They've been here since about 2000, but we didn't notice them really going off like gangbusters until 2008, 2009. If you remember all that filamentous algae that was on the shore, on the beaches, and that was a contributing factor. They, since they're in such tight formations, when they excrete, it's concentrated nutrients, and that's what algae likes to eat. And so we were experiencing a lot of that. Warm weather, lower water lower water levels, so kind of concentrating all that there.
There is a lot of science and biology that goes into understanding all of this, and you know, thank goodness for people like Dennis and all the folks involved in this effort, for the many agencies and the private sector to keep us protected here at Lake Tahoe and to try to put a handle on some of the things that are already here in the lake. And we're going to talk more about the lake and some of the efforts beyond the AIS programs, which Dennis is also involved in. We'll be back with you right after this very short break.
The Regional Report receives support from the Gill Professional Building, Lake Tahoe's most professional business location, 218 Elks Point Road, Round Hill, Zephyr Cove, Nevada. Professional office suites now available. Get information at 775-588-2488 or on the web at gillprofessionalbuilding.com.
And we are back with Dennis Zabaglo. I think your official title is Aquatic Resources Program Manager,
Correct.
is that right?
Yep.
So we've been talking about AIS and the prevention programs, the control programs, some of the challenges, some of the biology involved, and there's a lot of scientific work that goes to support the AIS program and all of the elements of it, and constantly looking at things like, the warming temperature of the lake, the effects of climate change on Tahoe and what that does to basically warmer water begets more invasive species. It becomes an atmosphere or an environment that they flourish in.
Right.
I guess everybody's probably heard of the story of the giant goldfish that was captured at Lake Tahoe, and that comes from people unfortunately dumping aquariums in the lake. We talked about how the Asian clam got here. So there's really a lot of things going on in the lake, and it's all important for us to do our job of not making sure we don't add to the problem by something that seemingly innocuous is throwing an aquarium into the waters. So lots of stuff going on and lots of ways that you can help, and you can help really by understanding. So we wanted to talk a little bit more about the partnership that you have with other Western states and at the national level, because AIS is certainly a wide issue. I know you said you're from the East Coast. A lot of states in the East have been dealing with this for many, many years, and slowly it got exported out to the West. And so describe some of those partnerships.
Yeah, with the mussel prevention effort in the West, water is very scarce. The biggest impact they have in a lot of places is to the infrastructure, hydroelectric, power, dams, things like that. And it became all very concerning when they were discovered in Lake Mead. And a lot of partners, mostly state-run agencies that do these boat inspections, started implementing them, but with not a lot of coordination. And so when we were trying to understand what water bodies may have mussels and what don't, there was little communication, little consistency in how we talked about things and terminologies. And so we all got together in an effort called Building Consensus and kind of standardizing our language and our terminology and our protocols for inspection and decontamination. And so we all know what we're talking about when we talk to each other. We're not all speaking a different language. Right. And boaters know what to expect when they cross state lines. Boaters boat everywhere. Right. I mean, that's how mussels likely came to the West, was a recreational boat. But here in Lake Tahoe, we've seen boats from every single state in the country. And so it just kind of shows you the threat is far and wide. And so having that partnership with the states, that we all term things the same, and the inspections and decontamination protocols are exactly the same everywhere. So it makes things more consistent and more effective.
And I guess that's very helpful too when you go to the federal government or to state governments and ask for money for these programs, if you're all talking the same terminology and people have a broad understanding of the significance of it. And I do know that helps with funding. Absolutely.
We partner really closely with the state of Colorado, state of California, Nevada, obviously, but also Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and we go out as a coalition to Washington, D.C. during National Invasive Species Awareness Week, and we talk to our collective legislators to talk about what we've done collectively and how they can help us help the natural resources, help the economy, help the infrastructure. And so we are speaking with a common voice. So the amount of travel that you've done in connection with the program, I know, is much greater now than when you started. Sure, yeah. But we're getting the word across, and I think messages are being heard. We're getting a lot more support from the federal government. They run a lot of these water bodies throughout the West, right? Especially the infrastructure, so it's important for them to make sure that these resources are being protected. When Dennis talks about infrastructure impacts, these mussels actually collect onto pipes and to dam surfaces, and really, as you say, cause havoc with the functionality of those. And once that happens, it's really hard to dislodge them. So really, this is about keeping infrastructure clean, keeping these mussels out, or reducing the impacts, because it is a significant cost. And I remember, speaking of significant costs, when the Army Corps a number of years ago did a cost analysis of what would happen to the Tahoe recreation and tourism economy if, in fact, we had beaches that were full of clams and mussels. And it was very, very significant, not to mention the fact that people come here because it's pristine, and to the extent that they see these things on the beaches, it really detracts from what Tahoe has to offer. So it's really important on a number of levels, this whole set of issues.
One of the big things that happened at TRPA and Tahoe over the last year or so was the TRPA was finally able to update its shore zone ordinances. And one of the big issues that affects boaters too, and boaters need to be aware of, is the greater enforcement of the no-wake zone.
Correct.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we've had a no-wake zone requirement for several years. It's 600 feet from shore. And if you're trying to figure out where that is, it's about a 90-second drive perpendicular from shore on your boat at idle speed.
Got it.
And so that gets you right about 600 feet. But we also have a new app, a mobile application for both Android and iPhone users that kind of gives you a location on a map of where you are, and the 600-foot no-wake zone is embedded in that map, and so you have a good idea.
Handy.
Yeah, it's a great tool. There's a lot of educational pieces on there, information about the various marinas and where you can get gas and things like that. So what's great about mobile applications, they can constantly be updated with new information, new educational
So
pieces.
how could people get the app? They go somewhere and download the app?
Yeah, they go to the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency's website, and there's a link for both iPhone and Android users. And at our boat inspection stations, we have a little QR scanning code that you just put your camera on it, and it will take you right to the App Store.
So technology is helping in that way
Absolutely.
too, because some people, the lake's pretty big, they get disoriented or they don't know exactly where they are and where am I in relationship to the no-wake zone, for
Right.
instance. And this app has information that could help you. Again, the idea of the no-wake zone is not sloshing water up on the beach, not getting close to areas where people are swimming, et cetera, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, there's many reasons for that increased no-wake zone. Erosion is certainly a big part of what we're all trying to deal with here in Lake Tahoe, how it impacts lake clarity, but also noise and then safety too.
Right.
You want to stay far away from other boaters, other recreators, paddle boarders, kayaks, things like that, and structures, piers and buoys. Keep a distance. It's no reason to get too close.
It's a big lake.
Yeah.
Usually there's
Plenty of
room for most folks. Maybe people are not aware that TRPA has a presence on the lake, and I think now you have two vessels that are out on the lake.
Yeah, we have 2 watercraft teams that go out. They do a lot of education. That's really one of the most important things we do at TRPA, I think, is to educate the public why we're doing what we're doing, how it could possibly impact our visitors and our locals here. And so they go out and inform what the rules are. Occasionally there is some enforcement, but that's necessary too sometimes. But also some sampling. They do some water quality sampling for us on the aquatic invasive species side to make sure that our prevention efforts are working. They do bird counts, the osprey nests around the lake. They take Forest Service employees out and make sure that's all happening. And we'll take out our decision makers and our funders to kind of show them what their investment is getting them. To talk about it on TV or at a presentation on a PowerPoint slide isn't always the best way to get your message across, but when you can get them out on the boat and see it right from the lake, it's a really powerful message.
And we've mentioned science playing an important role. Can you, Dennis, describe sort of how you interact and how you and your partners interact with the science community?
Sure. We partner quite a bit with University of Nevada, Reno, and University of California, Davis, TERC, the Tahoe Environmental Research Center up in Incline Village. Dr. Jeff Schladow does the State of the Lake report every year. Having them as partners has been very critical. Risk assessments for quagga mussels was certainly something we needed to have done. Can they survive in Lake Tahoe? That was a criticism we fought in the early stages of the
problem,
program.
they can't survive
They can't
here.
live here, but
That's not true.
You're correct. We've shown that they can grow and reproduce in Lake Tahoe water, and so that gave us the just that other
impetus
to make sure we're doing the program exactly. Thank you. And then making sure our programs are effective for the control side of things, having the researchers monitor water quality conditions and survivability of these species that we're trying to get rid of. And so having that science-backed effort is really critical.
Where do you see the program going forward? What new threats are maybe out there, or what?
Well, you mentioned climate change, and that certainly has our eyebrows raised. New species that may not have been able to live because it's too cold here. maybe now they can live here. So we're going to be doing some other risk assessments for different species, but longer growing seasons. Milfoil could potentially reproduce multiple times in a season instead of just once. So that could increase the pressure of those weeds in other areas. And like I said, and those risk assessments are certainly key, but then understanding boat technology, working with maybe engineers, just so we can make sure the equipment we use is keeping up with the increased technology of boats and these high-powered boats. And so we just bought a new decontamination unit with funding from the state of California, but working with the boat industry, having them review our specifications and making sure that that all met the demands of high-powered watercraft, that we don't want to damage any boats.
Right.
We want to get them out on the water as soon as they can. 3 steps closer to fun is one part of our mantra. But so working with engineers to make sure that we're keeping pace.
And a question had arisen too before we started the program about, so I have a kayak, I have a paddleboard. Do I have any role to play in this?
Absolutely. Paddleboards, non-motorized watercraft are a less risk, but they still present a risk. But we do have a stewardship program called Tahoe Keepers. You can go to tahoekeepers.org. You watch a video, you learn what the impacts are, how to clean, drain, and dry, and self-decontaminate your paddlecraft. And you take a test. And if you pass, you get a nice letter from me and a little sticker that indicates that you've bought into the program or taken your part into the program. And that makes your process of launching one of those paddlecraft a little bit easier. We have screeners at various places around the lake that will ask you some questions. If they do deem that an inspection is necessary, that is their function, but it's a free inspection. Right. So you can go to any one of our inspection stations to get that done.
And earlier you mentioned too about the role that the marina operators play and how important that is on the education side as well as keeping an eye on things with the people coming through their facilities, correct?
Absolutely. And they do a great job with their websites and just their engagement with boaters. We do a secret shopper program every year. We hire an independent firm and they kind of secret shop or mystery shop our inspectors, but also the marinas. They check their websites to see if there's aquatic invasive species information on there. They do cold calls to ask about the program or ask, what do I need to do to launch a boat at Lake Tahoe? And they've done a really great job of educating the public as well.
It takes everybody being involved.
Absolutely.
And so for people that might want more information, you are a fountain of knowledge, of course, but if people, is there a website? Where can people go for some more information?
For the boat inspection program, TahoeBoatInspections.com is a great resource. It shows all of our locations, the fees we charge, the hours of operation, where all the various launch facilities are, and of course, what the impacts of aquatic invasive species are to Lake Tahoe.
And a lot of these programs come under the umbrella of the Tahoe Environmental Improvement Program. I don't know if there's any projects that are on the EIP or the Lake Tahoe info site right now, but
a lot of projects from the control standpoint, the Tahoe Keys I mentioned, because it's such a large infestation, looking at other potential control measures. So that's top on our priority list right now.
But the main one is TahoeBoatInspections.com.
Correct.
Dennis, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Steve.
I really
Pleasure.
appreciate all the work you do and the many partners involved. And we have to be partners too. We have to be partners in helping to protect Lake Tahoe and doing the things we need to do to keep Tahoe blue. Thanks again for joining us on this edition of the Regional Report, and we'll see you next time right here on Douglas County Community Access Television.
You've been watching the Regional Report with Regional Reporter Steve Teshara. Studio location provided by the Gill Professional Building, 218 Elks Point Road, Round Hill, Zephyr Cove, Lake Tahoe. Graphic design and titles by Charter Advertising Design. Announcer Ed Miller, Wild West Communications. Production by Lloyd Higuera and Douglas County Community Access Television.